Hi, my name is Kagan Goh. I'm originally from Singapore. I'm a Singapore-born Chinese-Canadian BIPOC, uh, bipolar, manic depressive, out of the closet, mental health advocate and activist, multidisciplinary artist. So my day job has to do with mental health as a healthcare provider, and my artistic practice outside of work has to do with mental health in stories that I've been telling. My personal goal is to educate the public about mental health issues and help fight the stigma, prejudice, and discrimination against the mentally ill. It's almost like fighting an invisible enemy. You can't see it, but you can feel it. You can feel the discrimination, prejudice, and stigma, but it's like fighting a ghost, a phantom. It's not a physical entity, but it's there. You know it's happening. When I was told by my psychiatrist who diagnosed me that I had an incurable illness that would last my entire life, it sounded like getting a life sentence in prison with no chance for parole. But I didn't know what crime I had committed other than being mentally ill. And every time I would go back to the psych ward, the revolving door of the psychiatric system, I kept going back to the psych ward again and again. I had over a dozen hospitalizations over 14 years, almost one episode a year. At first, I was angry at the world. I was angry at my friends for rejecting me and walking away from me and abandoning me. I was angry at ex-girlfriends leaving me because I had a mental illness. I was angry at not getting jobs that I was capable of doing or losing jobs because I had a mental illness, So I had a lot of anger within me, but I didn't know who to fight. I couldn't see this invisible enemy. Everything I seemed to write or make as a film or a book or a play is all autobiographical. I might fictionalize or dramatize things, but actually the true life stories are stranger than fiction. It's much more bizarre and unusual. The psychological states of hallucinations, the visions that I've seen, the states of mania, psychosis, and depression are so outlandish that some publishers say, people feel ungrounded. They don't know where to stand. They don't know what reality is. The truth of mental illness, for those who have lived experience of it, is oftentimes the ground is gone, and you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to tread water and keep your head above from drowning. And it's not that I'm a narcissist and think that my life is more interesting than anyone else, but basically I feel that whether it's talking about racism in boarding school England, where I had to pretend to know Kung Fu in order to avoid being bullied by the school bullies, or whether it's the stories that I tell about my mental health journey of recovery, I find them interesting to me. And so far, I'm finding that audiences and readers have been responding to it, because not only do I speak for myself, but I speak for those who have been silenced. I didn't initially come straight from Singapore. I emigrated from England, where I was going to boarding school in Dorset. And instead of going back to Singapore, and my family had emigrated earlier in 1986. And at the age of 16, I emigrated to Canada, Vancouver, BC. I thought Canada and Vancouver was the lotus land, the promised land, after all the racism and discrimination I experienced in England. And initially it seemed like paradise, but people would say hello to you when you walk the seawall. But when you try to engage in them in further conversation, people would be weary, and it was a superficial kind of false friendliness, a phony kind of, multicultural harmony, when beneath it there was a seething kind of racism. It struck a chord with people when I would perform my poems or do storytelling at poetry slams and at poetry readings. People would come up to me from the audience, 2 or 3 people, and says, "Your story is my story. I feel heard." And these people had lived the experience of mental illness themselves, that I felt that they are the ones that I wanted to connect with. So when I feel hypomania coming on, I let it influence me, but I don't chase it, but ride it gently in gentle waves, gentle undulating waves, as opposed to huge peaks and valleys and roller coaster rides, which are devastating and destructive and sometimes even tragic consequences. I don't believe in romanticizing the mad genius, because so many of them died, and you can't create any more artwork when you're dead. Probably the greatest source of inspiration is my marriage. When my parents died, I thought that I would never experience unconditional love ever again, because my parents were the 2 people who stuck by me through thick and thin, and they are the ones why I'm still alive and here today. But when I met my wife, and for the last 8 years, it's been absolute marital bliss. And every moment together, she teaches me the meaning of unconditional love. And my wife's innate good nature brings out the best in me. Her innate good nature brings out my innate good nature. So I think the most valuable and the most important spiritual practice for me is my marriage. My word of advice for anyone who's got any kind of disability, whether it's mental health or physical disability or intellectual disability or whatever it is to make your health your first priority. Imagine a row of carriages, and your health is actually the engine, but you put it at the back of the train and it's pushing all the carriages forward, and there's a lot of traction and a lot of friction. Well, if you put your health in the front of the train and make it your first priority, it pulls all the other carriages, whether it's your friends, your family, your job, whatever. And then there's momentum, and it's the actual natural direction it's supposed to go.